The phone rang at 3:47 a.m. on a Tuesday in March. I know because I was staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep after another 16-hour day at the marketing firm. The caller ID showed "Mom" in harsh white letters against the black screen. Your father is dead. No hello. No gentle lead-in. Just 4 words that shattered everything I thought I knew about my family. I sat up in bed, my heart hammering against my ribs. What? Mom, what happened? Heart attack. He went peacefully in his sleep. Her voice was flat, emotionless. The funeral is Saturday. I assume you'll want to come. The way she said it, I assume you'll want to come, made it clear she hoped I wouldn't. Even in death, Dad was still driving wedges between us. Of course I'll be there, I said, though my voice cracked on the words. Good. We'll discuss the arrangements then. She hung up without another word. I sat there in the darkness, holding the phone, and felt something I hadn't experienced in years: relief. George Morrison, my father, the man who'd called me a burden more times than I could count, was gone. And I hated myself for feeling grateful. The funeral home smelled like lilies and grief. I arrived early, hoping to pay my respects before the circus began. But as I approached the casket, I found Oliver and Penelope already there, whispering in urgent tones. My brother Oliver looked up as I approached. At 35, he still had the same smug expression he'd worn since childhood, the look of someone who'd never been told he wasn't the center of the universe. Penelope, 2 years younger than me at 28, stood beside him with red-rimmed eyes and a tissue clutched in her manicured hand. Chloe, Oliver said, his voice carefully neutral. I wasn't sure you'd come. He was my father too, I replied, though the words felt strange in my mouth. George had never felt like a father to me, more like a distant, disapproving stranger who happened to share my DNA. Penelope looked up from her tissue. We need to talk. After the service. I nodded, though something in her tone made my stomach clench. The 3 of us stood there in uncomfortable silence, looking down at the man who'd shaped us all in different ways, none of them entirely healthy. The service was exactly what I'd expected. A parade of business associates and golf partners telling stories about what a great man George Morrison had been. How generous he was with his time. How he'd mentored young professionals. How he'd built his real estate empire from nothing. I listened to them paint a picture of a man I'd never known. The George Morrison they described was warm, caring, supportive. The George Morrison I'd grown up with was critical, demanding, and emotionally distant. He'd built an empire, all right, an empire of disappointment and conditional love. When it was over, Mom, Nora, approached me at the graveside. She was 62 but looked older, her blonde hair now silver and her face lined with what I'd always assumed was disapproval but now recognized as pain. Come to the house tonight, she said. We need to discuss your father's affairs. I almost laughed. Even in death, everything was about business with our family. The Morrison family home sat on 3 acres in the most exclusive part of town. Dad had bought it when his real estate business took off, and it had been his pride and joy. Every room was immaculate, every detail perfect. It was a house designed to impress, not to live in. I found myself in the formal living room, a space I'd rarely been allowed to enter as a child, sitting across from Mom, Oliver, and Penelope. Dad's lawyer, Mr. Hartwell, sat at the head of the table with a stack of documents. Thank you all for coming, he began, adjusting his glasses. George was very specific about his wishes. He wanted his family to hear this together. He opened the first document and began to read. The house, all 3 acres and 6,000 square feet of it, went to me. The vacation home in Colorado, to me. The investment properties, to me. The business, to me. Oliver and Penelope would receive trust funds, substantial ones, but the bulk of the estate, roughly 80% of Dad's assets, came to me. The silence that followed was deafening. "There must be some mistake," Oliver said finally, his voice tight. "There's no mistake," Mr. Hartwell replied. George was very clear about his intentions. He left specific instructions that these wishes were not to be contested. I stared at the documents, unable to process what I was hearing. Dad had left me everything. The same man who'd called me a burden, who told me I'd never amount to anything, who'd made it clear that Oliver was the son he'd always wanted and Penelope was the daughter he could be proud of. "This is ridiculous," Penelope said, her voice rising. "Chloe doesn't even talk to us anymore. She's been absent from this family for years." "Maybe there's a reason for that," I said quietly. Mom's eyes flashed. "Don't you dare make this about your childhood grievances, Chloe. We all had the same parents." "No," I said, standing up. "We didn't." I was 8 years old, standing in the kitchen, when I heard Dad on the phone with someone from work. I'd been excited because I'd just gotten my report card, straight A's, just like Oliver always got. "Yeah, the boys are doing great," Dad was saying. "Oliver's got a real head for business, just like his old man. And Penelope's going to be a heartbreaker, smart as a whip too. Chloe, well, Chloe's more of a burden than anything else. Always has been." I stood there, frozen, my report card crumpled in my small fist. A burden. That's what I was to my father. Not his daughter, not his child, a burden. Flashback, age 15. High school graduation season. Oliver had just been accepted to Harvard Business School. Penelope had been crowned homecoming queen and was dating the captain of the football team. I'd been accepted to Northwestern with a full academic scholarship. At dinner that night, I told them about the scholarship, thinking maybe, finally, Dad would be proud. "That's nice, honey," Mom had said, not looking up from her plate. Dad had grunted. "Just remember, college doesn't guarantee anything. Look at all those liberal arts majors working at coffee shops." Oliver had smirked. "At least when I graduate, I'll have a real job waiting for me." "That's right," Dad had said, clapping Oliver on the shoulder. "Real vision. That's what success takes." I'd eaten the rest of my dinner in silence, my scholarship letter burning a hole in my pocket. Flashback, age 22. I'd graduated summa cum laude from Northwestern with a degree in marketing. I'd landed a job at a prestigious firm in Chicago and was finally making something of myself. I'd called home to share the news. "That's wonderful, sweetheart," Mom had said, though her voice sounded distracted. "Your father's at the golf course, but I'll tell him when he gets home." He never called back. When I visited for Christmas that year, Dad introduced me to his golf buddies as my daughter who works in advertising. When I corrected him, marketing, not advertising, he'd waved his hand dismissively. "Same thing," he'd said. "She makes commercials or something." I'd spent 10 minutes explaining my actual job, but he'd already tuned out. Back in the present, I walked out of the lawyer's office in a daze. My phone was ringing before I'd even reached my car. "Chloe, we need to talk." It was Oliver. "I think we just did." "No, we need to really talk. As a family. Come to dinner tomorrow night." I almost said no. Almost got in my car and drove back to Chicago and my normal life where I didn't have to think about wills and inheritances and the complicated mess of family relationships. But something stopped me. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the hope that finally, after all these years, we could have an honest conversation about what had happened to our family. "Fine," I said. "But I'm not changing my mind about the will. Just come to dinner, Chloe. Please." The next evening, I pulled into the driveway of the house that was now, apparently, mine. It felt surreal. This house had never felt like home to me. It had always been Dad's domain, a place where I was tolerated rather than welcomed. Mom answered the door with a strained smile. "Chloe, sweetheart. Come in." The dining room was set with Mom's good china, the set she only used for special occasions. Oliver and Penelope were already seated, both looking unusually serious. "Thank you for coming," Mom said as I sat down. "I know this has been difficult for all of us." Dinner was awkward, filled with stilted conversation about the weather and mutual acquaintances. But as the evening wore on, I began to notice things. The way Oliver and Penelope kept exchanging glances. The way Mom's smile never quite reached her eyes. The way the conversation kept steering toward my life in Chicago, my job, my apartment. "You know," Oliver said as we finished dessert, "I've been thinking about what Dad would have wanted." "Here it comes," I thought. "He always wanted the family to stay together," Penelope added. "He used to talk about how important it was for us to take care of each other." I almost laughed. Dad had never said anything like that to me. "The thing is," Oliver continued, "I don't think he realized how the will would affect the family dynamic. I mean, you've got your own life in Chicago. You don't need all this property." "What are you saying?" I asked, though I already knew. "We're saying that maybe you should reconsider," Mom said. "Maybe you should think about what's fair." "Fair?" I set down my fork. "You want to talk about what's fair?" "Chloe," Penelope said, her voice taking on a pleading tone, "we're family. We should be taking care of each other." Where was that sentiment when I needed it? I asked. Where was the family support when Dad was calling me a burden? When he was making it clear that I wasn't good enough? When he forgot my birthday 3 years in a row? "That's not fair," Mom said. "Your father loved you." "No," I said, standing up. "He didn't. And you know what? I'm finally okay with that. But I'm not going to pretend that this family was anything other than what it was, dysfunctional." I headed for the door, but Oliver's voice stopped me. "He left you a letter." I turned around. "What?" "Dad left you a letter. Mr. Hartwell was supposed to give it to you, but we asked him to wait." "You asked him to wait?" I stared at them. "That letter was meant for me. We thought it might be better if you read it here," Mom said. "With family. So you could manage my reaction," I said. "Just like you always did." Penelope reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. My name was written across the front in Dad's careful handwriting. I took the letter with shaking hands. Chapter 6, The Letter. "Chloe. If you're reading this, then I'm gone and you're probably angry. You have every right to be. I wasn't a good father to you. I wasn't a good father to any of you, really, but I was especially unfair to you. I know you heard me call you a burden when you were 8. I saw you standing in the kitchen doorway, and I knew you'd heard. I should have explained then, but I was too proud and too stupid. You weren't a burden because you were difficult or disappointing. You were a burden because you reminded me of everything I'd failed to be. You were brilliant and independent and strong-willed, and that scared me. Oliver was easy to understand, he wanted to be just like me. Penelope was easy to love, she was sweet and compliant and never challenged anything. But you asked questions. You pushed back. You demanded better from the world, and that meant you demanded better from me. And I wasn't ready to be better. I know I failed you. I know I made you feel like you weren't good enough, when the truth was that you were too good for the small, closed-off world I'd built for myself. I'm leaving you the bulk of the estate because I want you to have choices. I want you to have the freedom to build something better than what I built. I want you to have the security to take risks and chase dreams and not worry about whether you're good enough. You've always been good enough, Chloe. You were good enough when you were 8 and got straight A's and I was too busy to notice. You were good enough when you graduated with honors and I was too proud to say I was proud of you. You've been good enough this whole time. I hope someday you can forgive me. I hope someday you can forgive yourself for believing what I taught you about your worth. Your mother and siblings will pressure you to share the inheritance. They'll tell you it's about fairness and family. But I'm trusting you to make your own choice about what to do with what I'm leaving you. It's yours, free and clear, to do with as you see fit. I love you, Chloe. I always have. I was just too broken to show it. Dad. I read the letter twice, tears streaming down my face. Around me, the dining room was silent. Well? Oliver said finally. I looked up at them, my mother, my brother, my sister, and saw them clearly for the first time. They weren't evil people. They were just people who'd learned to navigate Dad's expectations by becoming what he wanted them to be. They'd survived by being agreeable, by not rocking the boat, by accepting the roles he'd assigned them. I'd survived by leaving. I'm keeping the inheritance, I said quietly. Chloe, Mom said, please be reasonable. I am being reasonable, I replied. I'm honoring Dad's wishes. And I'm honoring my own. But what about us? Penelope asked. What about the family? What about it? I asked. This family stopped functioning a long time ago. We're all just going through the motions because we don't know how to do anything else. That's not true, Oliver said. We're still family. We can work through this. Can we? I asked. When's the last time any of you called me just to see how I was doing? When's the last time we had a conversation that didn't involve some kind of criticism or judgment? When's the last time we actually enjoyed each other's company? They couldn't answer because we all knew the truth. We weren't a family, we were a collection of people who happened to share DNA and a mailing address. I'm selling the house, I said. The word surprised even me. I hadn't planned to say them, but once they were out, I knew they were right. You can't, Mom said. This is the family home. No, I said. This is Dad's monument to his own success. It was never a home, it was a museum. And I'm done being an exhibit in someone else's collection. 3 weeks later, I got another call from Mom. Chloe, sweetie, can you come for dinner Friday? I'd like to talk about everything that's happened. Her voice was different, softer, more conciliatory. I should have been suspicious, but I was emotionally exhausted from dealing with real estate agents and legal paperwork. Maybe I wanted to believe that we could find some kind of peace. Just dinner? I asked. Just dinner. I promise. I drove down from Chicago on Friday evening, stopping at a hotel rather than staying at the house. I wasn't ready to sleep under that roof, not yet. When I arrived at the house, I immediately knew something was wrong. There were too many cars in the driveway. Through the windows, I could see people moving around inside. My first instinct was to leave. But something, maybe morbid curiosity, maybe a need to know just how far they'd go, made me ring the doorbell. Mom answered with that same strained smile. Chloe, thank you for coming. She led me into the living room, where I found not just Oliver and Penelope, but also their spouses, 2 of Dad's business partners, and a woman I didn't recognize wearing a concerned expression and a professional blazer. What is this? I asked. This is an intervention, the woman said, standing up. My name is Dr. Sarah Chin, and I'm a family therapist. Your family asked me to facilitate this conversation because they're concerned about your recent behavior. I stared at them. You've got to be kidding me. Chloe, please sit down, Mom said. We just want to talk. You want to talk? You ambush me with a therapist in half the town, and you want to talk. We're worried about you, Penelope said. You're making decisions that don't make sense. Selling the family home, cutting yourself off from us. I'm not cutting myself off from you, I said. I'm setting boundaries. There's a difference. This is about grief, Dr. Chin said in a calm, professional tone. Loss can make us act irrationally. It's common for people to make drastic changes when they're processing the death of a parent. Is it also common for families to stage interventions when someone inherits property they want? I asked. That's not what this is about, Oliver said. This is about you isolating yourself, making decisions based on anger instead of love. You want to talk about love? I turned to face him. Where was the love when Dad spent my entire childhood making me feel like I wasn't good enough? Where was the love when none of you stood up for me? Where was the love when you all just accepted that I was the family scapegoat? That's not how it was, Mom said. That's exactly how it was, I replied. And now you want me to believe that this is about my well-being. This is about money. This is about the fact that Dad left me everything and you think I should share it. Your father wouldn't have wanted the family to be torn apart, one of Dad's business partners said. My father spent 32 years tearing this family apart, I said. He's not here to see the consequences. Dr. Chin leaned forward. Chloe, I understand you're angry. But healing requires forgiveness. It requires letting go of past hurts and focusing on moving forward together. Forgiveness. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Let me ask you something, Dr. Chin. How much are they paying you for this session? I'm not being paid, she said. I'm here because I care about family healing. Really? Because this feels less like therapy and more like emotional manipulation. I stood up and headed for the door again, but this time Oliver physically blocked my path. You're not leaving until we settle this, he said. Get out of my way, Oliver. No. We're family, and we're going to work this out. Move, I said, my voice low and dangerous. Or what? He asked. You'll call the police. You'll sue me. You'll cut me out of your life completely. I don't need to cut you out of my life, I said. You were never really in it to begin with. The room fell silent. Even Dr. Chin looked uncomfortable. That's not true, Penelope said, tears in her eyes. We're your family. We love you. No, I said. You love the idea of me. You love the version of me that doesn't make waves, that goes along with whatever you want, that makes you feel good about yourselves. But you don't love me. You don't even know me. That's not fair, Mom said. Isn't it? I turned to her. When's my birthday, Mom? She hesitated. June 15th. July 23rd, I said. What's my middle name? Another pause. Marie. Elizabeth. What do I do for a living? You work in advertising, she said uncertainly. Marketing. I'm a senior marketing director at Morrison & Associates, ironically, no relation to our family, despite the name. I've been there for 6 years. I've won 3 industry awards. I make 6 figures. I own my own condo. I have friends and a life and interests that have nothing to do with any of you. I looked around the room at their faces, surprised, embarrassed, defensive. You don't know me, I continued. You know the version of me that exists in your heads, the version that makes you feel better about the way you treated me growing up. But you don't know the real me, and you never tried to. We're trying now, Penelope said. No, you're not. You're trying to manipulate me into giving you what you want. There's a difference. Dr. Chin cleared her throat. Chloe, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Your family contacted me because they're genuinely concerned about your well-being. They're not trying to manipulate you. Really? I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my messages. Then why did Oliver text me last week saying, "We need to find a way to make Chloe see reason about the money"? Why did Penelope call me selfish and greedy in a voicemail? Why did Mom tell Mrs. Henderson at the grocery store that I was having a mental breakdown, and that's why I was selling the house? I showed Dr. Chen the messages. Her professional composure cracked slightly. "This isn't about my well-being," I continued. "This is about the fact that Dad left me everything, and you all think I should share it. But here's the thing, I don't owe you anything. I don't owe you my inheritance, and I don't owe you my forgiveness, and I don't owe you a relationship. You owe us respect," Oliver said angrily. "We're your family." "Respect is earned," I replied. "And none of you have earned mine." "How can you say that?" Mom asked, her voice breaking. "I'm your mother. I raised you. I fed you and clothed you, and you stood by while Dad systematically destroyed my self-esteem," I interrupted. "You watched him treat me like I was worthless, and you never said a word. You never protected me. You never stood up for me. You enabled him." "I was trying to keep the peace," she said. "You were trying to keep yourself safe," I said. "And I don't blame you for that. But don't pretend it was for my benefit." The room was silent except for the sound of Penelope crying. "Look," I said, my voice softening slightly, "I'm not doing this to hurt you. I'm doing this because I finally understand what Dad was trying to tell me in that letter. He was giving me permission to choose myself. He was giving me permission to stop trying to fit into a family that never had room for me." "There's always been room for you," Mom said. "No, there hasn't. There's been room for the version of me that doesn't ask for too much, that doesn't challenge anything, that accepts whatever scraps of attention and affection you're willing to give. But there's never been room for the real me." I walked to the window and looked out at the perfectly manicured lawn, the expensive cars in the driveway, the facade of success that Dad had built. "I'm selling the house," I said without turning around. "I'm liquidating most of the assets. I'm going to keep some of the investment properties for income, but the rest is going to charity." "Charity?" Oliver's voice was strangled. "The local women's shelter. The children's hospital. The scholarship fund at Northwestern. Organizations that actually help people instead of just hoarding wealth." That's millions of dollars," Penelope whispered. "Yes, it is. And it's mine to do with as I please." I turned back to face them. "But I'll make you a deal. If you can tell me 3 things about me, real things, not just basic facts, I'll reconsider." They stared at me blankly. "What's my favorite book?" I asked. "Silence." "What's my biggest fear?" More silence. "What's my dream for the future?" Oliver opened his mouth, then closed it again. "You can't answer because you never asked," I said. "In 32 years, none of you ever asked me what I wanted or what I was afraid of or what made me happy. You just assumed I'd fall in line with whatever you needed me to be." "That's not true," Mom said, but her voice lacked conviction. "It is true, and you know it. And that's okay. I'm not angry about it anymore. I'm just done." Dr. Chen had been unusually quiet during this exchange. Now she spoke up. "Chloe, I need to ask you something. Did your family tell you why they contacted me?" I looked at her suspiciously. "They said they were concerned about my mental health." "That's not exactly what they told me," she said, glancing at Mom. "They told me you were having a breakdown and that you were threatening to hurt yourself." The room went completely silent. I stared at Mom, Oliver, and Penelope in shock. "They told me you'd been making suicidal statements," Dr. Chen continued. "They said you'd been talking about ending everything, that you were spiraling out of control." "I never said anything like that," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I'm beginning to understand that, Dr. Chin said. And I have to tell you, I'm concerned about the tactics your family used to get you here. What tactics? I asked. Lying about your mental state to a mental health professional is serious, she said. It's a form of manipulation that can actually cause the very crisis they claim to be preventing. I turned to Mom. You told her I was suicidal. We were worried, she said defensively. You were acting so strange, selling the house, cutting yourself off from us. So you lied to a therapist to get her to participate in ambushing me? It wasn't a lie, Oliver said. You have been acting erratically. Making decisions you don't like isn't the same as having a mental breakdown, I said. And it's definitely not the same as being suicidal. Dr. Chin stood up. I think I need to speak with Chloe alone. That's not necessary, Mom said quickly. Actually, it is, Dr. Chin replied. Could the rest of you please step outside? There was some grumbling, but they eventually left. Dr. Chin closed the door behind them and turned to me. I owe you an apology, she said. I was told this was a family in crisis, but what I'm seeing is a family that's using manipulation and emotional blackmail to control one of its members. Thank you, I said, relief flooding through me. I was starting to think I was going crazy. You're not crazy, she said. You're setting boundaries with people who aren't used to having boundaries set with them. That's healthy, not pathological. So what do I do now? I asked. You do exactly what you've been doing, she said. You make decisions based on what's best for you, not what's most convenient for them. But they're my family, I said, hating how small my voice sounded. Being related to someone doesn't give them the right to manipulate you, she said. Family relationships should be based on mutual respect and genuine affection, not obligation and guilt. I feel like I should try harder, I admitted. Like maybe if I just... No, she interrupted. You've spent 32 years trying harder. You've spent your entire life bending over backward to earn love that should have been given freely. You don't owe them any more of your energy. But what if I'm wrong? What if they do love me, and I'm just too damaged to see it? Love isn't just a feeling, she said. Love is a choice. Love is showing up for someone. Love is listening to them and supporting them and respecting their autonomy. Love is wanting what's best for them, even when it's not what's best for you. She gestured toward the door. What I saw in there wasn't love. It was control. It was manipulation. It was a group of people who want something from you and are willing to use emotional blackmail to get it. I felt something inside me break, not in a bad way, but in a way that felt like freedom. Like chains falling off. I need to leave, I said. I think that's a good idea, she replied. And Chloe, you should know that none of this is your fault. Sometimes families are just broken, and it's not your job to fix them. I walked back into the living room where my family was waiting. They looked up at me expectantly. Well? Mom asked. What did she say? She said you lied to her, I replied. She said you told her I was suicidal to get her to participate in this intervention. We were worried, Penelope said. We didn't know what else to do. You could have tried talking to me like an adult, I said. You could have tried treating me with respect. You could have tried accepting my decisions instead of trying to manipulate me into changing them. We just want what's best for you, Oliver said. No, you want what's best for you. There's a difference. I looked around the room one more time, at the expensive furniture, the family photos that told a story of happiness that had never really existed, the faces of people who shared my DNA but had never really known me. I'm leaving, I said. I'm going back to Chicago tonight. Chloe, please, Mom said. Don't leave like this. How else should I leave? I asked. Should I pretend this didn't happen? Should I pretend that you didn't lie to a therapist to get me here? Should I pretend that this was about anything other than money? It's not about money, Penelope said. It's about family. If it's about family, then why didn't any of you ask me how I was doing after Dad died? Why didn't any of you check on me to see if I was okay? Why didn't any of you offer support or comfort or even just a listening ear? They couldn't answer because we all knew the truth. They hadn't called because they hadn't been thinking about me. They'd been thinking about the will, about the inheritance, about what Dad's death meant for them. I'm selling the house, I said. The papers are already signed. The closing is next month. You can't, Mom said. This is our home. This is Dad's house, I corrected. It was never our home. A home is a place where you feel safe and loved and accepted. This place was never that for me. Where will I live? She asked. You'll figure it out, I said. You're a smart woman. You'll land on your feet. You can't just abandon us, Oliver said. I'm not abandoning you, I replied. I'm freeing us. I'm freeing you from the obligation to pretend to care about me, and I'm freeing myself from the obligation to pretend that this family was ever functional. We do care about you, Penelope said, tears streaming down her face. Maybe you do, I said. But caring isn't enough. Love isn't enough. Sometimes broken things can't be fixed. I walked to the door, but turned back one last time. For what it's worth, I said, I forgive you. I forgive Dad for being a terrible father. I forgive Mom for enabling him. I forgive you, Oliver, for being his golden child. I forgive you, Penelope, for being the princess. I forgive all of you for creating a family where I never felt like I belonged. Then why are you leaving? Mom asked. Because forgiveness doesn't mean accepting abuse, I said. It just means I'm not going to let the past poison my future. I drove back to Chicago through the night, my mind racing. By the time I reached my apartment, I felt lighter than I had in years. The weight of trying to be someone I wasn't, of trying to fit into a family that had never had room for me, was finally gone. Over the next few months, I followed through on my plans. The house sold quickly to a young family with 3 children who saw it as a home, not a monument. I kept 2 of the investment properties that generated enough income to give me financial security, but I donated the rest to the organizations I'd mentioned. The scholarship fund at Northwestern was established in Dad's name, with a specific focus on supporting first-generation college students from dysfunctional families who needed not just financial support, but emotional validation that they were worthy of success. The women's shelter received enough funding to build a new wing dedicated to helping women rebuild their lives after leaving toxic relationships. The children's hospital got a new pediatric wing. Each donation came with a small plaque that read, "In memory of George Morrison, who taught his daughter that sometimes the greatest gift you can give is the freedom to choose." My family didn't take it well. Oliver hired a lawyer to try to contest the will, but Dad's instructions had been ironclad. Penelope sent me a series of increasingly desperate texts, alternating between guilt trips and accusations. Mom called me once, crying, asking how I could do this to them. I changed my phone number. 6 months after Dad's funeral, I started seeing a therapist. Not because I was having a breakdown, but because I wanted to understand how I'd survived 32 years in a family that had never really seen me. Dr. Martinez was nothing like Dr. Chin. She was warm and genuine, with kind eyes and a way of asking questions that made me think rather than making me defensive. "Tell me about your childhood," she said during our first session. I launched into the familiar litany of complaints: Dad's criticism, Mom's enabling, Oliver's favoritism, Penelope's princess treatment. But halfway through, she stopped me. "That's what happened to you," she said. "I want to know about you. Who were you as a child? What did you love? What made you happy?" The question caught me off guard. I'd spent so many years defining myself by what I wasn't, not the favorite, not the golden child, not the princess, that I'd forgotten who I actually was. I liked to read, I said finally. I loved books. I could disappear into them for hours. What else? I liked to write stories. I had this notebook where I'd write these elaborate fantasies about families who actually liked each other. That sounds lonely. It was. But the stories helped. They helped me imagine what love could look like. Over the months that followed, Dr. Martinez helped me excavate the parts of myself that had been buried under years of trying to be good enough. I remembered that I'd wanted to be a writer when I was young. I remembered that I'd loved to paint. I remembered that I'd been funny and creative and full of big dreams. What happened to those dreams? She asked. I grew up, I said. I learned that dreams don't pay the bills. Or maybe you learned that dreams weren't safe in your family, she suggested. She was right. Dreams required vulnerability, and vulnerability required trust, and trust required safety. I'd never felt safe in my family to be anything other than perfect, and even perfection hadn't been enough. So what now? I asked. Now you get to choose, she said. You get to decide who you want to be, free from the expectations and limitations they placed on you. It was terrifying and exhilarating at the same time. 1 year after Dad's funeral, I received an unexpected package. There was no return address, but I recognized Mom's handwriting. Inside was a small wooden box, one I remembered from Dad's study. And inside the box was another letter, this one addressed to me in Dad's handwriting but never sent. Chloe. It's your 25th birthday today. I meant to call, but I wasn't sure what to say. I'm not good at this, talking about feelings, admitting when I'm wrong. Your mother says I should just pick up the phone, but I'm afraid I'll say the wrong thing. I'm afraid I'll make it worse. I've been thinking about when you were little. You used to climb into my lap when I was reading the newspaper and ask me about everything. What's that word mean, Daddy? Why are people fighting? How do airplanes stay up? You were so curious about everything. You wanted to understand the whole world. I didn't know how to answer your questions. I'd never been good with words, never been good at explaining things. So I'd get frustrated, and I'd push you away. Go ask your mother, I'd say. I'm busy. But you'd keep coming back. Every day, you'd climb into that lap and ask more questions. And every day, I'd push you away a little more, until eventually you stopped asking. I told myself it was because you were growing up, becoming independent. But the truth was, I'd broken something between us. I taught you not to trust me with your curiosity, your wonder, your need for connection. I see you now, and you're everything I hoped you'd be. You're smart and successful and independent. You don't need me anymore, and I'm proud of that. But I'm also sorry for it, because I know I forfeited the right to be part of your success. I know I called you a burden. I know you heard me. I replay that moment in my head sometimes, wondering what would have happened if I'd stopped and explained. If I'd told you that you weren't a burden to me, you were a challenge. You challenged me to be better than I was, and I wasn't ready for that challenge. You deserved better. You deserved a father who celebrated your questions instead of dismissing them. You deserved a father who saw your strength instead of feeling threatened by it. You deserved a father who loved you not despite who you were, but because of who you were. I'm trying to be better now. I'm trying to understand where I went wrong. But I'm afraid it's too late. I'm afraid I've lost you completely. If you're reading this, it means I never found the courage to send it. It means I died a coward, unable to face the damage I'd done. But maybe it's not too late for you. Maybe you can still find your way back to that little girl who wanted to understand everything, who wasn't afraid to ask questions, who believed the world was full of possibilities. Maybe you can forgive me. Maybe you can forgive yourself for believing what I taught you about your worth. You were never a burden, Chloe. You were the best thing I ever had a hand in creating, and I was too blind to see it. I love you. I'm sorry I was too proud to say it when it mattered. Dad. P.S. Your favorite book is Anne of Green Gables, because you identified with Anne's fierce independence and her refusal to be broken by the people who were supposed to love her. Your biggest fear is that you'll never be enough for anyone. Your dream is to write a book that helps other people feel less alone in the world. I did pay attention. I just didn't know how to show it. I read the letter 3 times before I realized I was crying. Not the angry tears I'd shed so many times before, but something deeper. Grief, maybe, for all the conversations we'd never had. Relief that he had seen me, even if he'd never known how to show it. I called Dr. Martinez. He knew, I said when she answered. He knew all along. How does that make you feel? She asked. Sad, I said. And angry. And free. Free. Free to stop wondering what if. Free to stop hoping he'd change. Free to stop waiting for an apology that was never going to come. And now I get to decide what to do with the rest of my life. 2 years later, I was in my apartment, working on the manuscript that would become my first novel, a story about a woman who discovers that the family she'd been trying to fit into her whole life had been the wrong shape all along, when my phone rang. It was Penelope. I stared at the caller ID for a long moment before answering. Hello, Penelope. Chloe. Her voice was different, older, somehow. More tentative. I wasn't sure you'd answer. I almost didn't. I need to tell you something. About the intervention. I waited. It was my idea, she said. Oliver wanted to hire a lawyer to contest the will. Mom wanted to guilt trip you into sharing. But I thought if we could get you to therapy, if we could get a professional to tell you that you were being unreasonable, you'd change your mind. I know, I said. You know. I figured it out afterward. The whole thing was too orchestrated, too calculated. It had your fingerprints all over it. She was quiet for a moment. I'm sorry. Are you? I asked. Or are you just sorry it didn't work? I'm sorry it didn't work, she said honestly. But I'm also sorry I did it. I've been thinking about what you said that night, about how we never really knew you. And you were right. Okay. I'm in therapy now, she said. Real therapy, not the fake intervention kind. And I'm starting to understand some things about our family that I never wanted to see before. Like what? Like the fact that Dad was emotionally abusive. Like the fact that Mom enabled it. Like the fact that Oliver and I benefited from it because it meant we never had to face his criticism. I sat down heavily in my chair. That's a lot to unpack. I know. And I know it doesn't change anything. I know it doesn't make up for 30 years of pretending not to see what was happening to you. No, it doesn't. But I wanted you to know that I see it now. I see how hard it must have been to grow up in that house, always fighting for scraps of attention and approval. I see how brave you were to leave, to build your own life, to refuse to accept crumbs when you deserved the whole meal. I felt tears prick my eyes. Thank you. I don't expect forgiveness, she said. I don't expect a relationship. I just wanted you to know that you were right about everything, and I'm sorry it took me so long to admit it. Penelope. Yeah. What's my favorite book? She laughed, and it was a sound I hadn't heard in years, genuine, not performative. Anne of Green Gables. You used to read it every summer, and you'd always cry at the part where Anne finds her kindred spirit. What's my biggest fear? That you'll never be enough for anyone. But Chloe. You've always been enough. We just weren't capable of seeing it. What's my dream? To write a book that helps other people feel less alone in the world. I was crying now. How do you know that? Because I finally asked. I've been asking everyone who knows you, your old teachers, your college friends, your coworkers. I've been trying to understand who you really are, not who we wanted you to be. Why? Because I love you, she said simply. Not the version of you that fit into our family, but the real you. The one who asks hard questions and refuses to settle for less than she deserves. The one who had the courage to walk away from us when we couldn't give you what you needed. I don't know how to do this, I admitted. I don't know how to have a relationship with you after everything that happened. I don't either, she said. But maybe we could try. Maybe we could start over, as adults, without all the baggage from growing up. I'd like that, I said. But it has to be different this time. It has to be real. I know. And Chloe, I'm proud of you. I'm proud of the life you've built, the success you've achieved, the person you've become. I should have said that a long time ago. Thank you, I whispered. I have to go, she said. But can I call you again? Maybe we could talk more. I'd like that. After she hung up, I sat in my apartment for a long time, thinking about second chances and the possibility of redemption. Not for the family as it had been, but for the individuals we were becoming. 6 months later, Penelope and I met for coffee in a small cafe in Chicago. It was the first time we'd seen each other in person since the intervention, and I was nervous. She looked different, older, more serious. The perfectly styled hair and designer clothes had been replaced by jeans and a simple sweater. She looked more real, somehow. Thank you for meeting me, she said as we sat down. Thank you for coming all this way. We talked for 3 hours. She told me about her therapy, about the things she was learning about our family dynamics. I told her about my book, about the healing I'd been doing, about the life I'd built in Chicago. Are you happy? She asked. Yes, I said, and realized I meant it. I'm actually happy. For the first time in my life, I'm doing what I want to do, not what I think I should do. I'm glad, she said. I'm glad you got out. I'm glad you saved yourself. What about you? I asked. Are you happy? She considered the question. I'm learning to be. I'm learning who I am when I'm not trying to be Dad's perfect daughter. And what have you learned? That I'm stronger than I thought. That I'm capable of more than I believed. That I don't have to settle for a life that looks good on paper but feels empty inside. What does that mean? It means I'm getting divorced, she said. It means I'm going back to school to become a social worker. It means I'm learning to live for myself instead of for other people's approval. How is Mom handling all this? Penelope's expression darkened. Not well. She's having a hard time accepting that the family she thought she had never really existed. She's angry at you for abandoning us, angry at me for betraying the family by going to therapy, angry at Oliver for being Oliver. And Oliver is. Oliver. He's doubled down on being Dad's son. He's taken over the business, married Dad's business partner's daughter, bought a house in the same neighborhood. He's trying to recreate the life Dad had, but with himself as the patriarch. Is he happy? I don't think Oliver knows what happiness is. I think he only knows what success looks like from the outside. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching people pass by the window. I have something for you, she said, reaching into her purse. She pulled out a small wrapped package. What is it? Open it. Inside was a leather-bound journal, beautiful and simple. On the first page, she'd written, "For the stories you're brave enough to tell." Penelope, I said, touched. I know you're writing a book, she said. I know it's about us, about the family. And I want you to know that I'm okay with that. I want you to tell the truth, even if it's hard to hear. Are you sure? I'm sure. The truth is the only thing that can set us free. As we said goodbye, she hugged me, really hugged me, not the perfunctory embrace we'd shared at family gatherings. It felt like forgiveness, like possibility, like the beginning of something new. My novel was published 2 years later. It was called The Burden, and it told the story of a woman who discovers that the family she'd been trying to please her whole life had been incapable of love. It wasn't autobiography. I changed names and details, created composite characters, invented scenarios. But the emotional truth was there, raw and unflinching. The book became a bestseller, not because of its literary merit, though the reviews were kind, but because it resonated with people who'd grown up in dysfunctional families. I received hundreds of letters from readers who said they'd felt seen, understood, less alone. One letter stood out. It was from a woman named Sarah, who wrote, "I've been trying to win my father's approval for 43 years. Your book helped me understand that I was playing a game where the rules kept changing, where winning was impossible. You gave me permission to stop playing. Thank you for that gift." Another came from a man named David. "I thought I was the only one who felt like an outsider in my own family. Your book helped me realize that sometimes the problem isn't us, it's the family system we're trying to fit into. I'm finally in therapy, finally working on healing. Thank you for showing me it was possible." But the letter that moved me most came from an unexpected source. It was from Oliver. "Chloe, I read your book. I know you probably didn't expect that, but I did. And I want you to know that I see myself in it, not in the way you probably think, but in the character of the brother who was so desperate to be the perfect son that he lost himself in the process. I've been thinking about what you said at the intervention, about how we never really knew you. But I'm starting to realize that you never really knew me either. You saw me as Dad's golden child, the one who got everything handed to him. But what you didn't see was the pressure that came with that role, the fear of falling from grace, the constant anxiety about maintaining perfection. I'm not making excuses for how I treated you. I'm not saying my experience was worse than yours. But I want you to understand that none of us escaped that house unscathed. We all just dealt with the damage differently. I know I can't undo the past. I know I can't take back the times I stood by while Dad tore you down, or the times I participated in it myself. But I want you to know that I'm sorry. I'm sorry for being part of a system that made you feel like you weren't good enough. I'm proud of you for getting out. I'm proud of you for building a life that makes you happy. I'm proud of you for having the courage to tell this story, even knowing it would hurt people you used to love. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect a relationship. I just wanted you to know that your book changed something in me. It made me realize that I've been living Dad's life instead of my own. I hope you're happy, Chloe. I hope you found the peace that eluded all of us growing up. Your brother, Oliver." I read the letter 3 times before I called Penelope. "Did you know he was going to write to me?" I asked. "He told me he was thinking about it," she said. "He's been different since the book came out. More introspective. More willing to admit that maybe our family wasn't as perfect as we pretended." "Is he okay?" "He's struggling. He's starting to question everything, his marriage, his career, his choices. It's hard to watch, but I think it's necessary. And Mom refuses to read the book. She says it's fiction, that you've made everything up for attention. But I think she knows it's true. I think that's why she's so angry." "I'm sorry," I said. "I know this is hard for everyone." "Don't apologize," Penelope said firmly. "You told the truth. That's not something to apologize for." 3 years after the book was published, I got a call that I'd been both expecting and dreading. "Chloe. It's your mother." Her voice was different, smaller, more fragile. She sounded old. "Hello, Mom. I'm dying," she said without preamble. "Pancreatic cancer. The doctors say I have maybe 6 months." "I'm sorry," I said, and meant it. "I'd like to see you," she said. Before I go." "I don't think that's a good idea." "Please, Chloe. I know I don't have the right to ask, but I'm asking anyway. There are things I need to say." Against my better judgment, I agreed to visit her. She was in a hospice facility, and when I walked into her room, I was shocked by how small she looked. The woman who had loomed so large in my childhood had been reduced to a frail figure in a hospital bed. "Thank you for coming," she said. "How are you feeling?" "Like I'm dying," she said with a weak smile. "But that's not why I asked you here." "Why did you ask me here?" "To apologize. To tell you that you were right about everything." I sat down in the chair beside her bed. "Mom. Let me finish," she said. "I know I don't have much time, and I need to say this while I can." She took a shaky breath. "I read your book. I thought you said it was fiction." I lied. "I read it the day it came out, and I've read it probably a dozen times since. And every time, I see more clearly what we did to you." "What do you mean?" "I mean I see how we failed you. How I failed you. How I stood by and watched your father destroy your self-esteem, and how I participated in it myself." "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I'm dying, and I don't want to take this guilt with me. But more than that, I want you to know that none of it was your fault. None of it was because you weren't good enough or smart enough or worthy enough. It was because we were broken people who didn't know how to love a child who was different from what we expected." "I don't understand." "You were supposed to be Oliver," she said. "When I was pregnant with you, your father was so sure you were going to be a boy. He had it all planned out, 2 sons to carry on the family name, to take over the business. When you were born a girl, he was disappointed. And when you turned out to be nothing like Penelope, strong-willed and independent and unwilling to be molded, he didn't know what to do with you. So he decided I was a burden. He decided you were a threat," she corrected. "You challenged his authority in ways that Oliver never did. You asked questions that made him uncomfortable. You refused to accept his word as law. And that scared him. Why didn't you protect me?" "Because I was scared too," she said. "I was scared that if I stood up for you, he'd turn on me. I was scared that if I challenged him, he'd leave. I was scared of being alone. So you sacrificed me to keep him." "Yes," she said simply. "And I've regretted it every day since." We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of 30 years of dysfunction hanging between us. "I don't know how to forgive you," I said finally. "I'm not asking you to," she said. "I'm just asking you to know that I'm sorry. I'm sorry for failing you. I'm sorry for choosing my own security over your well-being. I'm sorry for not being the mother you deserved." "Why now?" I asked. "Why wait until you're dying to tell me this?" "Because I was a coward," she said. "Because admitting I was wrong meant admitting that I'd wasted my life trying to please a man who was incapable of being pleased. Because facing the truth about our family meant facing the truth about myself. And what's the truth about yourself? That I was weak. That I was selfish. That I chose the easy path even when it meant throwing my own daughter under the bus. Do you regret it?" "Every day," she said. "Every single day." I looked at this woman who had given birth to me but had never really been my mother, and I felt something I hadn't expected: pity. Not the angry, resentful pity I'd felt before, but genuine sorrow for a life wasted, for choices that couldn't be undone. I forgive you, I said, and realized I meant it. You don't have to. I know I don't have to. But I want to. Not for you, but for me. I don't want to carry this anger anymore. She cried then, deep, body-shaking sobs that seemed to come from decades of suppressed grief. I'm proud of you, she said when she could speak again. I'm proud of the life you've built, the person you've become. I'm proud that you were strong enough to leave us behind. Thank you. And Chloe. Your book, it's beautiful. It's painful and honest and beautiful. Your father would have been proud, even if he never would have said so. Do you really think so? I know so. He kept a copy on his nightstand. He read it every night before he went to sleep. What? He never told you, but he followed your career. He read every article you wrote, every award you won. He had a scrapbook. A scrapbook. In his desk drawer. Pictures of you from college, newspaper clippings about your job, even a photo from your company website. He was proud of you, Chloe. He just didn't know how to show it. I felt something break inside me, not in a bad way, but in a way that felt like healing. Like the final piece of a puzzle clicking into place. Thank you for telling me that, I said. Thank you for coming, she replied. Thank you for giving me the chance to say goodbye properly. I left the hospice that day feeling lighter than I had in years. Not because I'd been forgiven, but because I'd finally found the courage to forgive. Chapter 18, The Legacy. Mom died 2 weeks later. I went to the funeral, not because I felt obligated, but because I wanted closure. Oliver and Penelope were there, of course, and we stood together as a family for the first time in years. It was strange, seeing the three of us together again. We looked like siblings, but we felt like strangers who happened to share a history. The people we'd been in that house, the golden child, the princess, the burden, were gone, replaced by the adults we'd become. After the service, we went to lunch together. It was awkward at first, but gradually, we began to talk like real people instead of the characters we'd played in our family drama. I'm getting divorced, Oliver said as we waited for our food. I'm sorry, I said, and meant it. I'm not, he replied. I married her because Dad approved of her, not because I loved her. I'm finally ready to make my own choices. What will you do? I don't know yet. Maybe sell the business. Maybe travel. Maybe figure out who I am when I'm not trying to be Dad. That's scary, Penelope said. Yeah, he agreed. But it's also exciting. We talked about our plans, our dreams, our fears. We talked about the people we'd been and the people we were becoming. We talked about the future instead of the past. I have something for both of you, I said as we finished our meal. I pulled out 2 envelopes. What are these? Penelope asked. Checks, I said. From the book royalties. I've been setting aside money for both of you. Chloe, you don't have to, Oliver started. I know I don't have to, I interrupted. But I want to. Not because I feel guilty, and not because I think I owe you anything. But because we're family, and family takes care of each other. Oliver looked at his check and whistled. This is a lot of money. It's enough to start over, I said. To build the life you actually want instead of the life you think you should want. Thank you, Penelope said, tears in her eyes. But are you sure? I'm sure, I said. The book was about all of us, even if you didn't always come across well. You deserve to benefit from its success. What about you? Oliver asked. What will you do now? I'm working on a new book, I said. About healing. About forgiveness. About what it means to build a chosen family when your biological family doesn't work. A chosen family. The people who love you for who you are, not who you're supposed to be. The people who show up for you, who support your dreams, who celebrate your successes and comfort you in your failures. Do you have that? Penelope asked. I'm building it, I said. One relationship at a time. As we said goodbye that day, I hugged both of them, really hugged them, the way family should hug. It felt like closure, like the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. Epilogue, 5 years later. I'm sitting in my office, looking out at the Chicago skyline, putting the finishing touches on my third book. It's been 5 years since Dad died, 5 years since I inherited the house and the money and the burden of deciding what to do with it all. Penelope calls me every few weeks. She's a social worker now, working with families in crisis. She's good at it, she says, because she understands what it's like to grow up in a house where love comes with conditions. She's dating someone, a kind, gentle man who makes her laugh and doesn't try to fix her. She's happy, or at least she's learning to be. Oliver moved to Colorado and opened a small bookstore. He calls it Second Chances, and he specializes in books about healing and recovery. He's dating someone too, a woman who knew him before he became Dad's golden child and likes him anyway. He's still figuring out who he is, but he's doing it on his own terms. I've built the chosen family I talked about. There's Marcus, my editor, who believes in my writing even when I don't. There's Sarah, my neighbor, who brings me soup when I'm sick and listens to me vent about difficult chapters. There's Dr. Martinez, who's become more friend than therapist, and who reminds me that healing is a process, not a destination. And there's James, the man I met at a book signing 2 years ago. He's nothing like the men I dated before. He's not trying to fix me or save me or change me. He just loves me, exactly as I am, burden and all. We're talking about getting married, about building a life together based on mutual respect and genuine affection instead of obligation and fear. Sometimes I think about the house I grew up in, the one I sold to that young family with 3 children. I wonder if they're happy there, if they've filled it with the kind of love that makes a house a home. I hope they have. Sometimes I think about Dad, about the letters he wrote but never sent, about the scrapbook he kept hidden in his desk drawer. I think about the burden he carried, the fear of not being good enough, the pressure to be perfect, the inability to show love in any way other than criticism and control. I understand now that he was just as trapped in our family dysfunction as I was, just in a different way. I've forgiven him. I've forgiven all of them. Not because they deserved forgiveness, but because carrying anger was like carrying a weight that was too heavy for my shoulders. Letting go didn't mean forgetting or excusing or pretending it didn't happen. It just meant choosing to focus on the future instead of the past. The phone rings, interrupting my thoughts. It's a reporter from a magazine, wanting to interview me about my latest book. What's your advice for people who are struggling with dysfunctional family relationships? She asks. I think about the question for a moment, about everything I've learned in the past 5 years. Your first responsibility is to yourself, I say. Not to your family, not to their expectations, not to their version of who you should be. Your first responsibility is to build a life that makes you happy, that reflects your values, that allows you to be authentic. But what about family loyalty? Loyalty should be earned, not demanded, I say. And it should be mutual. If your family isn't loyal to you, if they don't support you, respect you, celebrate you, then you don't owe them loyalty in return. That seems harsh. It's not harsh, I say. It's healthy. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is walk away from people who aren't capable of loving you back. Do you regret cutting ties with your family? I didn't cut ties, I say. I set boundaries. I refused to accept crumbs when I deserved the whole meal. And eventually, that forced them to decide whether they wanted a real relationship with me or no relationship at all. And what did they choose? Some chose real relationship. Others chose no relationship. But that was their choice to make, not mine. What would you say to someone who's afraid to set those boundaries? I'd say that fear is normal. I'd say that breaking free from dysfunctional family patterns is one of the hardest things you can do. But I'd also say that you're stronger than you think, and you deserve better than you've been accepting. Any final thoughts? Yes, I say, looking out at the city I've made my home, at the life I've built from scratch. You are not a burden. You are not too much. You are not responsible for fixing broken people or broken systems. You are worthy of love, exactly as you are. And if the people who raised you can't see that, then their vision is the problem, not your worth. After I hang up, I sit in the quiet of my office for a few minutes, thinking about that little girl who used to hide in her room, writing stories about families who actually loved each other. She couldn't have imagined that someday she'd be free, that someday she'd be happy, that someday she'd be exactly who she was meant to be. But she made it. We made it. And that's enough. The end.